I'm Brad Rippey with US Department of Agriculture. I'm going to take you on a quick tour on some of the USDA administered assistance programs triggered by the US Drought Monitor. First, a little background. The Drought Monitor has been around since the summer of 1999, almost a quarter century. First used for drought assistance in 2003 in a non-fat dry milk giveaway. Since 2008, the Drought Monitor has been permanently enshrined in federal legislation through the Livestock Forage Disaster Program to provide direct payments to drought-affected livestock producers. Here are some of the uses. We have the Fast Track for Emergency Loans, the Livestock Forage Disaster Program, the Conservation Reserve Program, WIP Plus, and the Emergency Relief Program. I'll touch on each of those for a few seconds as I move through the presentation. First of all, the Fast Track process. This was introduced by Secretary Vilsack during the drought of 2012 to streamline the process of making a drought disaster declaration at the secretarial level, and it replaces a cumbersome process that required a gubernatorial letter to the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture. It is not direct payouts, but it makes available low interest loans. The initial trigger is D2 for 8 weeks or more, or D3 at any time. Here's a quick look at the last 4 years of those secretarial drought disaster declarations by county. It includes contiguous counties, and you can see as drought comes and goes, those areas shift around. The Livestock Forage Disaster Program, very popular program that began with the Farm Bill of 2008. There were some modifications in the 2014 Farm Bill, and then it was reintroduced in the 2018 Farm Bill. Payments are based on drought intensity and the number of head of livestock, and as you can see, there's the intensity. It starts at D2 for 8 weeks and then steps up from there. Here's a look graphically at how that works. 1 monthly payment for D2 at 8 weeks, 3 monthly payments at D3 anytime, and then it steps up to as many as 5 monthly payments from there at D4 for 4 weeks. LFP payouts over the last 15 years have totaled $9.5 billion nationally. You can see as drought comes and goes, those numbers go up and down. And if you look at the statewide distribution, the livestock-heavy Great Plains and Western U.S. have dominated the landscape on LFP payouts. Oklahoma and Texas running neck and neck, around $1.8 billion each since the program began. Conservation Reserve Program, emergency haying and grazing, first used in 2012 and then more permanently implemented a few years later. And that is areas that are typically set aside or conserved can be used for emergency haying and grazing in times of drought. They do have to work around nesting seasons for various birds, but at the same time, it does open up land in times of drought. The general trigger is D2. You can see here's a recent map showing those counties that have qualified since October 1st of 2022 with the focus on the western and central United States. WIP Plus. Now this was originally designed for hurricanes, but at the time of drought increasing then in the late 2010s, we did see that expanded to include drought. And so when D3 or higher was observed on the Drought Monitor in calendar years 2018-19, that did qualify producers for these payments. And so that was officially added on December 20th of 2019. The Emergency Relief Program is the last thing I'm going to talk about today. And that is something that was just introduced in 2022, but it deals with the droughts of 2020 and 21. $10 billion authorized to be paid out, being paid out in 2 phases. Phase 1 payouts have already totaled $7.4 billion. And according to estimates, about 60% of that $7.4 billion, or a total of more than $4 billion, was attributable to drought. And based on the Drought Monitor depiction, similar parameters, D2 for 8 weeks, D3 at any time. And here's those payments as of late January, $7.35 billion going out. You can see the commodities. This is different than some of these other programs that focused on livestock. This is actually going to other crops that typically are insured, but because of the intensity of drought and the pandemic as we went into the early 2020s, this is a little bit of a buffer zone for producers that normally would not have qualified for this type of assistance. And again, solely based on the Drought Monitor, about 60% of these payments going to producers of various crops. My 5 minutes are up. Thank you for your time and attention this morning.